Welcome to Sound Asleep Stories, where we weave tales of adventure and fantasy to lull you into a peaceful slumber. For tonight's story, we continue with Anya, Torsten, and Alara as they embark in an ancient Dwemer vault. The trio secretly follow a band of dark cultists as they search for the keystone, which they plan to use to summon their dark Daedric prince. Get ready for a story of great power and sinister twists. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let the soothing sounds of our story carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us what you thought of the story. Sweet dreams.
Chapter 8 Echoes of the Past. The air rippled like water, Alara's magic fading into nothingness. Anya's skin prickled as the spell dissolved, leaving them exposed in the vault's dim light.
My power wanes,
Alara whispers.
Better to preserve what remains for when we need it most.
Anya pressed her back against the cold stone wall, watching the cultist torch flames dance ahead. The vault stretched deeper into the mountain, its ceiling lost in darkness above. Ancient carvings lined the walls, their meanings long forgotten.
Keep to the shadows.
Torsten's words came through gritted teeth, his hand pressed against his wound. The cultist's footsteps echoed off the stone, creating a rhythm Anya recognized. The sound of prey, unaware of pursuit. Her muscles tensed with each step, ready to spring at the first sign of danger. The group ahead carried 3 torches between them, casting long shadows that provided perfect cover. Anya counted their steps, matching her own pace to theirs, maintaining distance while keeping them in sight. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, marking time like a heartbeat. The air grew thick with the taste of old metal and stale earth. Their quarry turned a corner, their voices bouncing off the walls in fragments too broken to understand. Anya raised her hand, signaling a pause. The torchlight had stopped moving. She held her breath, listening to the scrape of boots on stone and the rustle of robes. The cultists had reached something, their destination perhaps. The passage opened into a cavernous chamber that stole Anya's breath. Bronze and copper machinery stretched toward the ceiling, their surfaces dulled by centuries of neglect. Massive gears lay frozen in eternal stillness, their teeth meshing with pipes thick as tree trunks. A mechanical construct lay sprawled across the floor, its brass limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Anya's boots crunched on fragments of metal as she crouched to examine it. The machine's crystal core had shattered, leaving only an empty socket where its heart should have been.
Dwemer spheres,
Alara breathed, running her fingers along the construct's intricate engravings.
Their guardians still sleep here, broken but not forgotten.
The cultists' torchlight bounced off walls lined with strange instruments and devices. Tables covered in tools and half-finished inventions lined the chamber's edges. Metal parts scattered across the floor caught the light like fallen stars.
Mind where you step.
Torsten murmured, nudging aside a severed mechanical arm.
Even dead wasps can sting.
Anya's gaze traced the paths of thick pipes. More broken spheres lay crumpled in corners, their brass shells split open like eggs. A massive head of another construct, this one shaped like a man but twice as tall, stared at them with empty eye sockets. Its jaw hung open on broken hinges, frozen in an eternal scream. Anya crept along the chamber's edge, keeping the cultists in view while scanning the ancient benches. A glint caught her eye, different from the dull brass and copper surrounding them. Metal arrows, their tips crackling with contained lightning, lay scattered across a workbench. Her fingers tingled as she lifted one, examining the Dwemer runes etched along its shaft. The quiver beside them hummed with the same energy, perfectly sized for her bow. Torsten moved, weaving between fallen machinery. He paused at a weapons rack, his hand wrapping around the hilt of a great sword. The blade ignited at his touch, flames dancing along its edge without consuming the metal. A pleased grunt escaped his throat as he tested its weight.
Look.
Elara's whisper drew Anya's attention. The high elf held an ornate circlet, its metal woven in intricate patterns. When she placed it on her brow, her eyes widened. A broken sphere lifted from the ground, floating at her gesture before settling back down. This gave Elara some control of telekinesis. Anya's attention drifted to a small box, partially hidden beneath centuries of dust. Inside, a ring pulsed with an inner light that matched her heartbeat. As she slipped it onto her finger, power surged through her veins. Familiar yet strange, like a word forgotten on the tip of her tongue. She couldn't quite place the use of this piece. The cultists' voices echoed from deeper in the chamber, their search growing more frantic. Anya secured the quiver at her hip, feeling the electricity dance across her skin. The ring's power continued to pulse, but remained mainly dormant. Anya didn't have time to experiment. They must keep moving. Anya crept forward, following the cultist's torchlight as it illuminated something massive ahead. Her breath caught in her throat. A pit stretched before them, carved deep into the mountain's heart. Within its depths, brass joints creaked and ancient gears ground together. A mechanical giant towered 3 stories high, its crystalline heart pulsing with an eerie blue glow. Unlike the broken spheres littering the chamber, this construct moved with terrifying purpose. Its brass arms, thick as ancient tree trunks, shifted with precision as it maintained the ancient machinery around it.
By the 9.
Torsten's whisper carried a rare note of awe. Elara gripped Anya's arm.
The journal spoke of this. The Dwemer used soul stones to power their creations, crystals that contained captured spirits. Most held animal souls, giving their machines basic function.
She pointed to the construct's chest.
But that glow, that's no common soul stone. The strength of its light suggests something far more powerful.
The cultists gathered at the pit's edge, their excitement palpable even from a distance.
The prince's essence.
Elara's voice trembled.
They believe this machine contains a soul stone, housing a fragment of their prince's power. If they retrieve it.
Anya watched as the cultists began setting up climbing gear, preparing to descend into the pit. The mechanical giant continued its work, unaware of the theft they planned. Its movements sent tremors through the stone beneath their feet, each step a reminder of its overwhelming power. The blue glow pulsed brighter, casting strange shadows across the chamber. The giant's head turned, gears whirring, its crystal eyes sweeping the chamber. The cultists raced their hands in unison. Dark energy crackled between them, the air thick with the stench of blood magic. Red tendrils shot toward the mechanical giant, wrapping around its brass limbs like vines. The construct's movements slowed, its joints grinding as the magic penetrated its ancient frame. The cultists' chanting grew louder, their dark power pulsing in waves that made Anya's stomach turn. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber. The giant's crystal heart flared brilliant blue, burning away the blood magic like morning sun melting frost. Its arm swept out in a devastating arc, catching two cultists mid-chant. Their bodies hit the far wall with a sickening crunch. The remaining cultists scattered as the construct advanced. Its footsteps shook the chamber, sending tools and broken machinery crashing to the floor. A brass fist plunged down, crushing another cultist beneath its weight. Two more fell as the giant's crystal eyes unleashed beams of searing light. The last cultist backed away, his hood falling to reveal a face twisted with desperation. His hands moved in complex patterns as he spoke words that made Anya's ears burn. Light poured from his eyes and mouth, his body lifting from the ground.
For the prince.
His final words rang out as his body exploded in a blast of pure energy. The shockwave knocked Anya off her feet, heat searing her face, even from their hidden position. When the light faded, the mechanical giant stood motionless. Its brass plates were scorched black, joints sparking and grinding. The crystal in its chest flickered with less vibrancy, but the construct remained upright, its head turning with mechanical precision as it scanned for new threats. Anya's heart pounded against her ribs as she knocked one of the Dwemer arrows. Lightning crackled along its shaft, making her hair stand on end. The mechanical giant loomed before them, its crystal heart pulsing with ancient power.
We need to bring it down.
Torsten raised his flame-wreathed blade, muscles tensed.
Before more cultists arrive.
Ilara's circlet gleamed as she lifted her hands. A broken sphere rose from the ground and hurtled toward the construct's head. The giant's arm snapped up, batting it aside like a toy. But the distraction gave Anya her opening. Her arrow flew true, striking a joint in the construct's knee. Lightning exploded across its brass plating, making it stagger. The ring on her finger thrummed with power, and suddenly she felt her newfound ring warm. Time slowed around her, giving her precious extra seconds to dodge as the giant's fist crashed down. Torsten charged forward, his burning sword leaving trails of fire in the air. He ducked under a sweeping arm and brought his blade down on the giant's leg, molten metal dripping where fire met brass. Ilara's magic lifted rocks and metal, creating a storm of broken machinery that pelted the construct from all sides. Her eyes glowed with power as she directed the assault, each impact precise and calculated. Anya rolled behind a fallen pillar, drawing another lightning arrow. The giant's crystal eyes fixed on her position, twin beams of energy cutting through the stone. The ring's power surged again, and she darted between the beams, loosing her arrow at the construct's chest. Lightning and ancient magic collided in a thunderous blast. The giant stumbled backward, its crystal heart flickering. Torsten's blade found another weak point, and Ilara's telekinetic barrage kept the construct off balance. Brass plates buckled under their combined assault. The giant's movements grew erratic, sparks flying from damaged joints. But its crystal heart still pulsed with terrifying power, and its attacks came with unrelenting force. They needed to find a way to reach that heart, or their battle would be for nothing. Metal scraped against stone as panels in the chamber walls slid open. Mechanical barking echoed through the vault as dog-sized constructs poured out, their brass jaws snapping. Red crystal eyes fixed on Anya and her companions. Her muscles burned as she dove behind a fallen column, an electric arrow barely clearing her bow before a mechanical hound crashed into her previous position. The arrow struck true, short-circuiting one of the constructs, but more kept coming. Torsten roared in pain as brass teeth tore into his already wounded side. His burning blade cleaved through the attacker, but the effort drove him to one knee. Blood darkened his furs. Ilara's magic flickered, her strength fading as she held back 3 of the constructs. Sweat beaded on her brow, her hands trembling with effort. The circlet's glow dimmed. The giant loomed over them, its crystal heart pulsing with renewed vigor. Anya's quiver held only 3 arrows. Her ring's power felt distant, almost spent. A thought struck her as she watched Torsten's blade pulse with unstable fire. "Torsten! Pour everything into your sword!" Understanding. He planted his feet and channeled his strength into the blade. Flames roared higher, the metal beginning to warp. "Ilara!" Anya knocked all 3 remaining arrows. "When I break its shield, throw that sword straight into its heart." The high elf nodded, positioning herself behind Torsten. Anya drew back her bow, electricity crackling along 3 shafts. The ring's power surged one final time as she released. The world slowed to a crawl as Anya's fingers released the bowstring. The ring on her finger blazed with heat, its power flooding her veins one last time. Each heartbeat stretched into eternity as she watched the 3 lightning-wreathed arrows arc through the air. Electric tendrils wrapped around each shaft, connecting them like links in a chain. The arrows spiraled around each other, their combined power creating a vortex of crackling energy that lit the chamber in harsh yellow-white flashes. Anya tracked their path with perfect clarity, seeing every minute detail, dust motes swirling in their wake. The reflection of power on brass plates, individual sparks dancing between arrowheads. The giant's crystal heart pulsed once, twice, as the arrows crossed the distance. The mechanical hounds froze mid-leap, caught in the ring's temporal effect. Torsten's flames stretched like liquid gold through the air, each ember leaving trails of light. Ilara's hair floated around her face, power radiating from the circlet as she prepared to seize the burning sword. First arrow struck the giant's chest plate, lightning exploding outward in a web of energy. Second arrow hit a fraction of a moment later, its power combining with the first. Cracks appeared in the construct's protective shielding, spreading like ice breaking on a spring lake. The third arrow, carrying the combined charge of all 3, pierced through the weakened point. Time snapped back to normal speed as the arrow struck true, shattering the giant's defensive barrier in a thunderous crash that shook the very mountain. Ilara's magic wrapped around Torsten's overcharged blade. With a cry of effort, she ripped it from his hands and launched it forward. The sword pierced the giant's chest, plunging deep into its crystal heart. The explosion knocked them all backward. When the dust settled, the mechanical giant stood frozen, its heart dark and silent. Chapter 9. Veil of Deception. Anya's legs gave out, and she slumped against a fallen column, her chest heaving. The ring on her finger had gone cold, its power spent. Her fingers trembled as she lowered her bow.
By the 9.
Torsten pressed a hand to his bleeding side, managing a pained laugh.
Haven't had a fight like that since my younger days.
We did it.
Elara brushed debris from her robes, the circlet's glow fading to a dim flicker.
Though I fear these artifacts may be drained of their power.
Anya watched Elara approach the fallen giant, her steps unsteady but determined. The high elf's hands traced the air above the construct's darkened chest cavity, green magic dancing between her fingers.
The soul gem appears intact.
Elara reached into the mechanical beast's chest, carefully extracting a crystal the size of her fist. Purple light swirled within its faceted surface. Torsten limped across the chamber, retrieving his war axe from where it had landed during the battle's opening moments.
Good to have you back, old friend.
He ran a finger along its edge, checking for damage. A chill ran down Anya's spine as they made their way toward the vault entrance. Whispers tickled the edge of her hearing, drawing her attention to the soul gem in Elara's hands. Dark promises echoed in her mind, speaking of power beyond mortal understanding. The voices carried authority, ancient and terrible. The gem's purple glow pulsed in time with the whispers, like a heart beating with stolen life. Anya's steps faltered as the presence reached out, its essence far older and darker than anything she'd encountered. Anya watched Torsten draw his axe, his intention clear.
We end this now. One strike should shatter it.
No.
Elara clutched the soul gem to her chest, backing away. Her green eyes flashed with alarm.
Breaking it without proper containment could release energies beyond our control. Ancient artifacts like this require specific rituals for destruction.
Anya's hand drifted to her bow, caught between her mentor and their new ally. The whispers from the gem grew louder, more insistent.
Cutting things in half has always proven effective in my experience. Who exactly can destroy it properly?
Torsten's knuckles whitened around his axe handle.
An old friend in the College of Winterhold, a master of containment magic.
Elara's voice steadied.
I give you my word. This needs to be handled with precision.
Anya touched Torsten's arm. Torsten lowered his weapon with a grunt.
Fine.
They made their way back through the vault's winding passages. At the entrance, Elara leaned heavily against a wall, her face pale.
I apologize, but my magic... The battle has drained me. I cannot conceal us as before.
Anya knocked an arrow, prepared for the guards they'd passed earlier. Her boots made no sound on the stone floor as she crept forward. The entrance chamber stretched before them, filled with dancing shadows from wall-mounted torches. But the cultist guards were gone. No signs of struggle marked their departure, just empty posts and abandoned chairs. Where did they go? Anya whispered, scanning the shadows.
Keep moving.
Torsten urged.
Questions later.
Anya's bow traced the empty chamber, every muscle taut with tension. The silence pressed against her ears, broken only by their footsteps echoing off ancient stone.
Now!
Ilara's voice cracked through the air like thunder. Ice exploded around Anya's boots, crystallizing in an instant. Her legs locked in place as frost crawled up her calves. Next to her, Torsten roared and struggled against similar bonds. Traitor! Anya's accusation cut short as movement flickered overhead. Two dark shapes dropped from the shadowed ceiling. Pain exploded across the back of her head. Her bow clattered to the ground as her vision swam. Through dimming eyes, she watched Torsten take a blow to the temple. His massive frame crumpled like a felled tree. The last thing she saw was Ilara's emerald eyes, cold and distant as winter stars. Consciousness returned in fragments. Cold stone pressed against her back. The air hummed with power, making her teeth ache. Anya forced her eyes open, fighting waves of nausea. 3 figures stood in a triangle around her and Torsten's prone form. Ilara and the cultists raised their arms in perfect unison, their voices weaving together in an ancient tongue. Purple light poured from their hands, forming threads that wove through the air. Each pulse sent ripples through reality, distorting the air like heat waves rising from summer rocks. The magical threads expanded outward, forming a translucent dome that grew steadily larger. Anya tried to move, but her limbs felt leaden. The ward continued its inexorable growth, magical energy crackling as it passed over her body. Next to her, Torsten lay still, blood matting his hair where the cultist had struck him. The bubble of energy sealed above them with a sound like breaking glass, slowly trapping them. Pain throbbed at the base of Anya's skull as she pushed herself up against the cold stone. Why? Her voice cracked. After everything we did for you. Ilara paced outside the magical barrier, her elegant features twisted into a predatory smile.
My dear, I never lied about rebelling against the cult. I merely omitted certain details.
We trusted you, Anya spat.
My parents led with outdated ideals, refusing to harness our prince's true potential.
Ilara's fingers traced patterns in the air, strengthening the ward.
I convinced others to follow me, to embrace a bolder vision, but mother and father discovered my plans.
Rage burned through Anya's veins. And that's why they locked you away.
Indeed. Though I must thank you both. Your arrival provided the perfect opportunity. The keystone was always there, waiting in that vault.
Ilara pulled the soul gem from her robes.
And now, with my loyal followers by my side, I can finally complete what I started.
Memory flashed in Anya's mind. Paper falling from Ilara's robes before they entered the vault. A note. You signaled them.
Clever girl. So observant.
If you're going to kill us, get it over with. Anya's hands balled into fists. Ilara laughed, the sound echoing off ancient stone.
Kill you? No, no. Our little adventure showed me your worth. Once I claim the Serpent's Fang, I'll need capable allies.
She leaned close to the barrier.
And you two proved quite useful.
I'd rather die than serve you, you treacherous witch. Anya hurled herself at the magical wall. Pain exploded through her body as the ward's energy repelled her. Black spots danced across her vision.
Such spirit.
Ilara's voice grew distant as darkness crept in.
Rest now, dear friend. You'll need your strength for what's coming.
Consciousness slipped away as Anya's curse died on her lips. Anya's head throbbed. The vault's dim light filtered through purple-tinted walls of magical energy surrounding her. Her bow and quiver were gone.
About time you woke up!
Torsten's fist slammed into the barrier, sending ripples through its surface. His knuckles came away bloody, but he drew back for another strike. Wait! Anya grabbed his arm. You'll break your hand before you break through. Torsten yanked free, his face twisted in fury.
Better than waiting here while that witch...
Look. Anya pressed her palm against the ward. Energy crackled beneath her touch, but weaker than Ilara's prison had been. Different from before, less refined.
Means nothing if we can't get through it.
Torsten paced the enclosed space, checking every inch of the barrier's surface. Anya closed her eyes, recalling how they'd freed Ilara. The ward responded to the ley lines in the chamber. Maybe these ruins have similar energy flows.
Not much magic between us.
Torsten ran his fingers through his beard.
Unless you've been hiding some talent.
Anya pressed her palm harder against the barrier, frustration building in her chest. A tingling sensation crawled up her arm, different from the ward's burning energy. Deep in her bones, a familiar power stirred, ancient and fierce as the northern winds. Her grandmother's voice echoed in memory, telling tales of their bloodline, of Nord shamans who commanded primal forces long before the Empire brought its organized magic. Raw power that flowed through the land itself, speaking to those who remembered how to listen. The energy pulsed stronger now, racing through her veins like ice melt in spring. Her ancestors had wielded this force against dragons and demons, their battle songs carried on winter storms. Their strength lived in her, passed down through generations of hunters and warriors who called these mountains home.
Anya!
Torsten's voice seemed distant as the power built within her chest. Blue light flickered beneath her skin, cold as glacier depths, like oil spreading across water. Through closed eyes, she saw paths of power threading through the stone beneath their feet. Not the ordered channels of modern magic, but wild currents that followed the mountain's own rhythm. The old ways weren't lost, just sleeping, waiting for need to wake them. The energy surged through her body, raw and untamed. Her blood sang with memories of ancient battles, of powers wielded before the first stones of Markarth were laid. She felt the presence of her forebears, proud, fierce, and free as the hawks that rode the winds above their peaks. Power rippled through Anya's veins, ancient and wild. Her mind expanded beyond the ward's confines, reaching into dark corners where small creatures scurried and hunted. Raw magic coursed through her body, awakening instincts buried deep in Nord blood. A presence brushed against her consciousness. Tiny heartbeat, twitching whiskers, sharp teeth. A rat watched from shadows near the ward's edge, its mind touching hers like a cautious paw testing water. Anya gasped as her vision doubled. One view showed the purple-tinged ward, Torsten's concerned face. The other revealed a rat's eye perspective of their prison, everything huge and looming. Sense flooded her awareness. Metal, magic, old blood.
Are you well?
Torsten's voice seemed distant. Anya barely heard him. Through the rat's keen senses, she perceived what human eyes couldn't. Glowing tendrils of magic anchoring the exterior of the ward to the chamber floor. Each strand pulsed with power, feeding energy into their magical cage. "Little one," she whispered in her mind, reaching out to the rat. "Help us." The rat's curiosity mixed with her determination. Its sharp teeth could serve a greater purpose than gnawing bread crusts and leather. Guided by Anya's will, the rat scampered to the nearest tendril. Its teeth found purchase on an ethereal strand. Magic sparked and fizzled as tiny jaws worked through the connection. The ward flickered slightly as the first tendril snapped.
What magic is this?
Torsten watched the rat with wide eyes. "Something old," Anya murmured, maintaining her focus on the rat. "Something that remembers when Nords spoke with beasts." The rat moved to the next tendril, continuing its work. Each severed connection weakened the ward further, purple light dimming bit by bit. Through her connection with the rat, Anya felt each bite reverberate up her spine. The creature's determination matched her own as it gnawed through another glowing tendril. Purple sparks scattered across its whiskers, but the rat pressed on, driven by their shared purpose. The ward's surface rippled like disturbed water where each magical anchor broke free. Anya's hands pressed against the barrier, feeling its strength waver. Her breath caught as the rat's teeth severed a third strand, this one thicker than the others. A crack appeared in the ward's surface, spreading like ice breaking on a spring lake. "Keep going, little friend," Anya whispered, both in her mind and aloud. The rat darted between shadows as it circled their prison. Its nose twitched, sensing the strongest remaining connections. Through their bond, Anya guided it toward a pulsing strand near the chamber's far corner. This tendril proved more stubborn than the others. The rat's teeth sparked against it repeatedly, sending jolts through both their bodies. But neither gave up. Anya felt the creature's jaws aching, its determination fueled by her own will. With a final surge of effort, the rat bit through. The ward's purple glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. Anya watched through dual perspectives as the rat gnawed through the last magical tether. Her connection to the creature filled her with its feral courage, its wild determination. Torsten backed up against the opposite wall. Their boots scraped stone as they readied themselves. "On 3!" Torsten's muscles bunched. 1, 2, 3. They charged forward, shoulders lowered. The weakened barrier bent like thin ice under their combined weight. Magic crackled and sparked around them. Pain lanced through Anya's body as the ward's remaining energy fought back. The barrier shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Anya and Torsten tumbled through, rolling across cold stone. Purple shards of magical energy dissolved into mist around them. Anya pushed herself to her knees, head spinning. Through blurry vision, she spotted the rat watching from its corner. "Thank you, little friend." She bowed her head to the creature. "Run free." The rat's whiskers twitched once before it darted into a crack in the wall, disappearing into the depths. The connection between them faded like morning mist. Torsten retrieved his axe from where it had fallen during their capture. He helped Anya to her feet. Anya slumped against the cold stone wall, her muscles aching from the ward's residual energy. How are we supposed to stop her now? Her fist struck the wall. She has both the keystone and who knows how many cultists at her command. Torsten ran his hand over his war paint, a habit she recognized from their hunting days when he pondered difficult tracks.
We're not alone in Markarth.
What do you mean?
The companions maintain a presence in every major hold.
Torsten straightened his shoulders, pride evident in his bearing.
There's a gathering of shield brothers and sisters here for the month. Warriors I'd trust with my life.
Where?
The lower district, in an old mead hall converted to training grounds.
Torsten checked his axe's edge.
Good warriors, every one of them. Skilled in tracking and fighting.
Anya pushed herself off the wall. You think they'll help?
The companions don't take kindly to dark magic.
Torsten's eyes hardened.
And they honor their own. My word carries weight among them.
Then what are we waiting for? Anya moved toward the chamber's exit, her steps gaining purpose. Lead the way.